The last couple of videos I've recorded have been tutorials, so I thought we'd have a bit of a change of pace today, and I'd like to talk about this book here. It's called The Next Word, AI and Teachers, and it's written by Dr. Nicholas Jackson and Matthew Esterman, and I think it's a really great primer for those in education who are looking to have an insight into how AI might affect education now and in the future. I've made a few notes here which I'd like to refer to as we go along. First of all, a little bit about the authors. Dr. Nicholas Jackson is the leader of digital technologies at Scott College in Adelaide in South Australia. And his co-author, Matthew Esterman, is also from Down Under. He's a history teacher and a director of innovation and partnerships at Our Lady of Mercy College in Parramatta. And the book was published last year by Amber Press. And one of the first things that is interesting here is it's unusual to have a hard copy book about something that's evolving as rapidly as artificial intelligence is. And the authors openly acknowledge that. They recognize that by the time they go to print, some of what they have to say is no longer pertinent and that there will be changes. And that's kind of their point as well. But I will say that a lot of the content of this book is evergreen, and that the principles on which they base their discussion and some of the ideas and provoking questions that they ask will be as relevant, I think, a few years from now as they are today. It's a really useful primer for somebody who hasn't particularly dived deep into AI, but wants to get an overview and a sense of where are we now, where are we heading, what are the likely ways in which AI is going to impact students and teachers. And the book's divided into 6 chapters, in fact. And the first chapter is called My Robot Ate My Homework, and it provides a foundational understanding about AI's role in education. And then chapter 2 is Secret Cyborgs Everywhere. And this one explores the ways in which AI can be integrated into everyday educational practice. And in fact, it suggests that there are these secret cyborgs in our community already who perhaps aren't talking about the ways in which they're using AI in their teaching practice, and they're quietly getting on with it and making themselves more efficient and effective. And I guess I'm a secret cyborg. Chapter 3 then is entitled Cheating Well, and it looks at strategies that we should have in an era where academic dishonesty is easier than ever before. Chapter 4 is entitled Curriculum with Expiry Dates, and it explores the rapidly changing world of AI and how we may need to adapt our curriculum in the face of this disruptive technology. Chapter 5, entitled Replacing Teachers, explores exactly what the name suggests, the hot debate as the degree to which artificial intelligence is threatening the role of human educators. And then finally, we've got Chapter 6, Humans, Computers and the Future, Are You Helping? And it looks forward at the direction of travel and where we're likely to be if things continue at the pace that they are now. It's really useful that there's a TLDR at the end of each chapter, but rather than just being a summary, it also asks some useful debating questions or provokes thinking and additional research. I thought was a really well put together section at the end of each chapter. So I don't want to go through in granular detail and reveal everything about the book, because I think it's really worthwhile making the investment and supporting the authors. I can't remember how much this cost me, but it wasn't a great deal. I ordered it on Amazon, had it the next day and read it over a couple of days whilst on a Duke of Edinburgh expedition in the Peak District, which I've just got back from, hence the fact that I'm looking slightly pink perhaps. It was a very sunny and lovely time in the hills. But what I will do is I'll go through each chapter in turn and mention some of the things that I thought were particularly useful and that I enjoyed reading, and it'll give you a sense of whether this is a book you want to invest in. So the first thing about chapter 1 is it identifies that ChatGPT really came to market just in November 2022. And it always staggers me when I hear that statistic and think, is it just been 3 years, less than 3 years, that AI has become something that is having an impact on the average person in society? It's extraordinary how quickly things are going. It identifies LinkedIn as a platform which is vanguarding the way in which teachers are discussing and interacting with AI. And I think that's absolutely true. I spend quite a bit of time on LinkedIn and reading some really thought-provoking articles and discussion, and there are links to YouTube videos. It's a great starting point if you're just getting into AI as an educator and want some steers as to which voices are worth listening to. It identifies that the early responses to AI, this attempt to block or ban or condemn artificial intelligence, came from a recognition of legitimate concerns, but it was essentially an unhelpful approach. And it compares the same ways in which we've responded to social media as well. It then shifts the perspective to argue that we might like to think about artificial intelligence as a capability accelerator, and I really like that phrase. It asks the question, what happens when teachers are no longer in control of technology access? Because, well, two things strike me here. First of all, students are accessing AI on their phones. It's now integrated into most social media platforms. And it's found its way past the moats for those schools that were looking to block AI and prevent it from making its way into our institutions. Systems like Microsoft Office or Microsoft 365 or Google have all got AI integrated into them. So they've sort of bypassed any moats that we've created. So I think that reinforces this idea for me that even if you don't like where AI is heading and you'd rather have nothing to do with it, you kind of have no choice but to get involved in the debate because it's slipped in under the net and it's everywhere now. It's endemic. So we kind of need to get engaged. Another thing in this chapter that's identified is that learning and assessment are still chained to pre-AI models. Schools were not designed to evolve as quickly as artificial intelligence is requiring us to respond. And that if we wish to remain relevant, we need to find ways of accelerating our responses to disruption. The authors state that students will choose efficient and effective options. So the library, the internet, search, teacher support are all being bypassed by AI tutoring because it's at their fingertips. It's available 24 hours a day and it's something that they can do independently. And many of them are doing it without any training in how to effectively prompt. The chapter ends by asking the question of whether artificial intelligence in our classrooms is an exciting or a threatening reality. And they state that this is just a matter of perception. On the one hand, it offers the promise of self-directed, personalised and engaged learning. But on the other hand, there's the ever-present threat of plagiarism and cognitive offloading. And that takes us to chapter 2, which very much resonated with my model of the AI animal menagerie, this idea that we respond to artificial intelligence in different ways, which is predicated on the ways in which we're inclined to respond to change itself. The authors suggest that we are all cyborgs anyway, that we augment our daily lives with technology. We use mobile phones, we use GPS, we use cars, which increases the speed that we can navigate our physical environment. And schools have always had digital assistants of one kind or another, most recently with LMS systems and with email, for example. But this idea of the secret cyborgs very much aligned to my model of the octopus, or I guess the secret octopus, that early adopter of AI tools that's experimenting in the background, finding new ways of adapting to a world of AI, but not necessarily sharing it with our colleagues or with our students because we feel that it's not yet sanctioned or fully understood. The authors suggest that there's this stigma which leads to undirected experimentation, and particularly with students. They talk about the fact that we need to find some solution to workload, and they cite the fact that 50% of teachers burn out and leave the profession within 5 years, which is a shocking statistic. The authors go on to ask this question that assuming that AI continues to progress and is able to perform the work of humans, or at least much of the work of humans, as well or better than we can, how much would we be willing to offload to machines? And of course, that's an individual issue. If I were allowed to implement AI as I saw fit in my own classroom, I would offload anything where an AI model can do what I can do better, because my focus must be student-centric. And then I would look to concentrate on those parts of curriculum delivery where I still excel my AI machine counterparts. To close out that chapter, the authors recognise that this is a matter of trust. We need to get all stakeholders involved in the conversations around AI, parents, teachers, students, and have a measured and thoughtful adoption of artificial intelligence in educational systems. Chapter 3 begins by asking a great question, which is it cheating to use a spell checker? And this in turn leads to looking at Matt Miller's 2023 model from the Ditch That textbook, which is a great book as well. And it suggests this idea that we need to rethink our somewhat strict parameters of what defines cheating or plagiarism. They recognise that students for a long time now have been augmenting their individual performance for coursework and long-form writing using things such as the advice of teachers, the use of siblings and peers, parents who might have an invested interest in the performance of their children, and of course, in some cases, private tutoring. And what of those students that don't have access or can't afford access to those resources? In some ways, AI provides an equitable solution to the lack of advantage those students have, assuming, of course, you have access to AI. A quotation by Adrian Cottrell captures this idea perfectly. He says, "We have a system that lets kids cheat and has been tolerant of cheaters for a long time." And I think this is a courageous statement and one that definitely resonates with my experience. We all know that students who do coursework perform better than those who just operate within a terminal exam environment. But there's no way in which we've got absolute confidence in the fact that the work is 100% generated by the students themselves. Chapter 4 begins by exploring the opportunities that we have as teachers to use AI for data mining. And this is something I've been doing more of recently, where I'm anonymizing the data, feeding it into a large language system, and then asking it to analyze the data of my students' performance in different parts of the IGCSE curriculum that I teach, and then seeing areas for growth. Are there certain patterns where students are underperforming in certain parts of the testing process? And this can be rolled out not just for an individual class, but a whole cohort, and can give us insights that we might not have from the exam boards. It goes on to argue for the need for increasingly adaptive and personalised programs of study, hybridised learning, where you have AI tutoring going on, and then that's augmented by human to student interactions, which I think is probably the direction of travel for the future. And then argues that there is an opportunity for offloading teacher workload without deprofessionalising what we do. Then chapter 5 begins with a fantastic quotation by Sugata Mitra from an MIT Media Lab interview all the way back in 2012, in fact, which says, "A teacher that can be replaced by a machine should be." And that stopped me in my tracks when I read that, and I actually ended up reading it out to some of the colleagues who were with me on the D of E trip, and we had this sort of quite spirited discussion. The authors go on to acknowledge the complexity of what we do and state that learning and teaching is a highly contextualized profession, and they advocate augmented practice whilst maintaining human-centric education. Then in chapter 6, it goes on to call for teachers to be more actively involved in the AI debate. And I think this is very true. If you go into LinkedIn and look at who is dominating the conversations there, it's not often practitioners. It's often people who run marketing companies or providers of AI services. And then you've got politicians who for a long time have used education as their own personal hobby horse. We need teacher voices, and we need informed teacher voices to be involved in the AI debate and shaping the way AI is implemented into our schools. And there's a very useful quotation here that they have in this chapter. "We are stewards of children's academic journey, entrusted with the legal and moral oversight of learning spaces." I think that's great. And they offer this really interesting idea also for teacher training. They imagine a world in which AI systems are good enough that we can put a early career teacher in front of an imaginary classroom, perhaps a holodeck-based kind of classroom where we have AI avatar students, and then they can deliver their lesson and then get feedback from the AI model about what went well and how they can improve their teaching practice. I thought that was a really interesting idea. And then that takes us to the conclusion of the book. And it starts by saying the difficult part of writing a conclusion in this area, in the area of AI, is that there isn't one. This was always meant to be the next word, not the final word. And I like how they bring us back to the title of the book. It's just the next word. It's part of an evolving conversation. And they end by saying, and I quote, "We don't want to replace great teachers, but there is a chance that great teaching might come from entities other than humans." And I really like the measured approach that the authors have taken here. They're saying, look, we can't ignore the reality of AI, and it's likely to become even better over time. It's going to probably be able to do some parts of what we do as teachers better than we can, but it won't replace us entirely. And that's because, again, I refer to the conclusion here, schools will evolve, but our superpower remains our connection with our students, especially if we are engaged with the technology alongside them. So that's their clarion call at the end of the book, which is we remain relevant. What teachers do will continue to be valued, but we can't afford to be on the sidelines. We must get involved. We must find ways in which it can be implemented and make conscious choices about what we want AI to do and what we want to still be doing ourselves in the service of our students. So that's The Next Word. Great read. Really would recommend you to get hold of a copy individually or for your departments or school. Share it around and go to those chapter summaries at the end and use those as an opportunity for discussion points. As always, this is an unsolicited review. I don't know the authors, although I hope to meet them one day. This is just my thoughts on something I picked up and wanted to share with you. Thanks for listening and for watching, and until next time.